runes, Norse gods, and the pagan Wiccan tradition, a deep dive, the sacred alphabet carved in wood and stone, the 9 worlds of Norse cosmology, Odin, Thor, Freya, and the living pantheon, how ancient paganism became Wicca, and what it means for a path of synthesis today. Thizanal fisting sanas me, H. Halignity. 11. Predantion. Contents. Introduction. The living alphabet and the living gods. Part 1. The origins of runic writing. Part 2. The Elder Futhark, all 24 runes in full. Part 3. Rune magic, casting, Bindrins, and Galder. Part 4. Norse cosmology, Yggdrasil and the 9 worlds. Part 5. The Norse pantheon, the Aesir and Vanir gods. Part 6. Odin, the Allfather and the Seeker. Part 7. Thor, Freya, Loki, and the major deities. Part 8. Fate, the Norns, and the web of word. Part 9. Norse afterlife, Valhalla, hell, and the soul. Part 10. What is paganism? The umbrella and its many traditions. Part 11. Wicca, history, theology, and practice. Part 12. The Wiccan wheel of the year and the Sabbats. Part 13. Wiccan deities, the god and the goddess. Part 14. Wiccan ritual, casting the circle and the elements. Part 15. Norse, pagan, Wicca, and halagricity, where the paths cross. Introduction. There is something about carved letters and painted gods that speaks directly to the oldest layers of human consciousness. Something about the idea that language is not merely a communication tool, but a living force, and that the divine is not remote, but local, personal, and intimately involved in the world of weather and war, love and death, craft and courage. This is the world of the runes, the Norse gods, and the broader pagan and Wiccan traditions that have carried these understandings into the modern era. The runes are simultaneously an alphabet, a magical system, a philosophical teaching, and a divinatory tool. One of the most complete sacred symbol systems in the world, each of the 24 letters carrying layers of meaning developed over centuries of practice and contemplation. The Norse gods who inhabit the same cultural world as the runes are some of the most psychologically complex, morally ambiguous, and philosophically rich divine figures in any tradition, beings who pursue wisdom at enormous personal cost, who fight battles they know they will ultimately lose, and who regard courage in the face of inevitable doom as the highest human virtue. Wicca, the modern witchcraft religion developed primarily in the mid-20th century, draws on pre-Christian European paganism, ceremonial magic, folklore, and nature spirituality to create a living practice that honors the divine as both masculine and feminine, understands magic as the conscious direction of natural energy, and organizes sacred time around the turning of the seasons. It is one of the fastest growing spiritual movements in the world and one of the most misunderstood. This guide gives all 3, runes, Norse gods, and Wicca, the depth they deserve. The origins of runic writing. The runes are not merely an alphabet. In the Norse Germanic understanding, they are not a human invention at all. They are cosmic forces that exist independently of human perception, that were discovered by Odin through an act of extreme sacrifice, and that carry within themselves the power to affect reality when properly understood and employed. Historical origins. From a purely historical and archaeological perspective, runic writing emerged among Germanic peoples of Northern Europe around the 2nd century CE. The earliest confirmed runic inscriptions date from approximately 150 to 200 CE and are found on objects across Scandinavia, northern Germany, and the regions of Germanic migration. The script almost certainly derived from contact with Mediterranean alphabets, particularly the old Italic scripts, though the specific mechanism and location of this development remain debated. The word rune itself is revealing. It derives from the Proto-Germanic runo related to Old Norse Run Gothic runa and Old English run, all meaning secret, mystery, whispered counsel, or hidden wisdom. The rune is not first and foremost a letter, it is a secret, a mystery that reveals itself to those who have prepared themselves to receive it. The alphabetic use was secondary to the magical and divinatory use in the understanding of the tradition itself. Odin's sacrifice and the mythic origin. The Norse mythological account of the rune's origin is one of the most extraordinary passages in all of world mythology. In the poem Havamal, Odin himself speaks of how he obtained the runes. I know that I hung on the windswept tree for 9 full nights, wounded with a spear and given to Odin, myself to myself, on that tree of which no man knows from what roots it rises. They gave me no bread and no mead to drink. I peered downward, I took up the runes, screaming I took them, and then I fell back. Odin hangs himself on Yggdrasil, the world tree, for 9 nights, wounded, starving, without water, and without the help of any other being. This is an initiatory death, a voluntary descent into extremity in order to receive something that cannot be obtained any other way. At the moment of maximum suffering and surrender, the runes reveal themselves from the depths of the tree. He seizes them screaming. The receiving of sacred knowledge is not peaceful, but violent, overwhelming, physically shattering. The 3 runic alphabets. The runic tradition developed several related but distinct alphabets across time and region. The Elder Futhark contains 24 runes and is the oldest complete system, in use from approximately 150 to 800 CE. It is the most widely used in modern runic practice and the system explored in depth in Part 2. The younger Futhark simplified the system, paradoxically becoming less phonetically adequate just as literacy was increasing. The Anglo-Saxon Futhark expanded the Elder system for use in England and developed some of the richest surviving runic poetry. The Elder Futhark, all 24 runes in full. The Elder Futhark divides into 3 groups of 8 runes called Aetir. Each Aet is associated with a divine patron and carries its own internal coherence of meaning. Below is every rune with its name, primary meanings, keywords, and full esoteric teaching. First Aet, Freya's 8, Uruz or Aurochs, primal strength, untamed force. Raw power, health. The wild that cannot be fully domesticated, the aurochs, was the enormous wild ancestor of domestic cattle, massive, aggressive, and untamable. Uruz is the rune of primal, undifferentiated life force, the raw vitality that exists before it has been shaped into any specific form. It is associated with physical strength, health, and the wild. Its shadow teaching concerns the danger of primal force that is never disciplined. Enormous power without direction destroys as easily as it builds. Uruz's gift is access to the deep well of primal energy. Its challenge is learning to work with it rather than being overwhelmed by it. Kenaz, or torch, fire of craft, controlled illumination, creativity, technical skill. The inner fire of the craftworker Kenaz is the torch. Not the wild fire of a forest conflagration, but the controlled, directed flame that illuminates a workshop and allows careful work to be done in the dark. It is the fire of craft, the rune of the smith, the weaver, the poet, anyone who transforms raw material through sustained, skilled application of creative fire. Kenaz is the rune of initiation and of passion in the sense of creative burning, the inner flame that makes excellence possible. It is also the fire of inner illumination, the light that allows you to see clearly what is actually in your own interior. Wunjo, or joy, belonging, the harmony of right community happiness, fellowship, the joy that arises from being in the right place. Wunjo is the rune of joy, but not the superficial happiness of getting what you wanted. Wunjo is the deep joy of belonging, the experience of being exactly where you're supposed to be, among the people you're supposed to be with, doing what you are meant to do. It is the joy of the clan. Wunjo signals alignment between inner and outer, between self and community, between desire and reality. It is also associated with the perfection of craft, the moment when work comes together exactly as it should. Its shadow is the false joy of conformity, belonging that requires the self to be suppressed. Second Aet, Heimdall's 8 Hagalaz or hail, disruption, destructive transformation, the storm that clears, unavoidable disruption, the gift of destruction, Hagalaz is hail, the sudden storm that destroys what was growing, that arrives without warning and leaves devastation. It is the rune of unavoidable disruption, the crisis that cannot be prevented, only navigated. But hail melts into water, and the Norse saw in this a deeper pattern. Hagalaz is the seed form of the 9 runes of Heimdall's Aet. All 8 others can be found within its structure. Destruction contains within it the pattern of what will come after. The hailstorm is also rain, the devastation is also clearing. Hagalaz teaches that not all destruction is wrong. Some things need to be shattered before they can be rebuilt in a truer form. Nod or need, necessity, the fire of friction. Constraint, patience, and difficulty, the power generated by resistance, Nod is his need. Specifically the need fire, the fire generated by friction rather than by a torch or hearth. In ancient times, need fire was made by rubbing 2 pieces of wood together, the slow, effortful generation of flame through sustained friction and resistance. Nadiz is the rune of necessary constraint, the difficult conditions that, endured with patience and will, generate a power that comfort never could. It is also the rune of discernment, of knowing what you truly need versus what you merely want. Its teaching is that resistance is not simply an obstacle, but often the very thing that produces the strength required for the next phase. Isa, or ice, stillness, the pause before action stasis, concentration, the necessary freeze before breakthrough. Isa is ice, the complete stopping of all movement, the freezing of what was flowing. Isa is often unwelcome in divination because it signals delay, blockage, or enforced stillness. But ice is also one of the two primal forces of Norse cosmology. It is the stillness out of which all form crystallizes. Isa teaches that not all pauses are failures. Sometimes everything must come to a complete stop before the next movement can begin. It is the rune of concentrated mental focus, ice as the purest form of water, the essential distilled, and of the necessary rest before the next creative surge. Jera or year, harvest, the cyclical return of right timing patience, the long view, the harvest that comes to those who have prepared Jera is the rune of the year in its complete cycle. Sowing, tending, harvesting, resting, sowing again. It is the rune of right timing, the recognition that natural processes cannot be rushed, that the harvest arrives when the harvest arrives, and that the farmer who attempts to reap before the grain is ripe destroys what they hope to gather. Jera is profoundly practical and profoundly philosophical simultaneously. It honors the reality that causes have effects at their own pace, and that wisdom consists partly in knowing which season you are actually in. It is also the rune of legal justice, the rightful outcome that arrives after patient process. Awaz or yew tree, the axis of life and death, endurance the world axis, resilience through both worlds, death as passage not ending. The yew tree is the most ancient of European trees. Some specimens are over 4,000 years old, and contains both deadly poison and life-preserving medicine within the same bark. It is evergreen in the depth of winter, and associated with both death and endurance beyond death. Awaz is the rune of the world axis, the hidden center of Yggdrasil itself, and of the capacity to stand between worlds, to move through death and not be annihilated by it. It is the rune of the shaman, the death walker, the one who can go where others cannot, and return with knowledge. Perthro or lot cup, chance, the mystery of fate. The unknowable, the hidden, what is cast to chance Perthro is among the most mysterious runes. Its original meaning is genuinely debated, and that mystery is itself the teaching. Most interpretations associate it with the lot cup, or with a dice cup, the vessel of chance and fate. Perthro is what is hidden, what is cast, what is determined by forces beyond personal control. It is the rune of weird and of the womb, the hidden place from which things emerge. Its teaching is the acceptance of what cannot be known in advance, the willingness to cast the lot and receive what comes. Algiz or elk sedge, divine protection, the open hand sanctuary, connection to the higher self, protective reach toward the divine algiz is the rune of protection. Specifically, the protection that comes from genuine connection to the divine and from living in alignment with one's higher self. Its shape is the upward-reaching form of a human being with arms raised, the gesture of prayer, of openness, of reaching toward what is above. The elk sedge cuts the hand that grabs it carelessly, but provides sanctuary to the elk that shelters in the marsh. Algiz teaches that genuine protection comes not from walls and weapons alone, but from the clarity of conscience and the strength of spiritual connection that makes one genuinely difficult to attack. Third Ayet, Tears 8. Birkenau or birch, birth, the nurturing container, new beginnings, nurturing, the sacred feminine in her generative aspect. Birkenau is the birch tree, the first tree to colonize cleared ground, the tree of new beginnings, the tree associated with the goddess in her nurturing, birth-giving aspect. Birkenau is the rune of birth in the broadest sense, the birth of children, of projects, of new phases of life. It is the great nurturing container, the womb, the nest, the protected space in which new life can grow before it is strong enough to face the world. Its teaching concerns the sacred act of creating conditions for growth, the patience, protection, and nourishment that new life requires before it can stand on its own. Awaz or horse, partnership, the trust between rider and mount, sacred partnership, trust in relationship, harmonious movement. Together, Awaz is the horse, specifically the relationship between horse and rider. In the Norse world, the horse was the most sacred animal. It was sacrificed at the greatest rituals, associated with divine figures, and understood as a partner rather than merely a vehicle. Awaz is therefore the rune of sacred partnership, the trust, communication, and mutual attunement that makes two beings move as one. It is associated with marriage, with magical working partnerships, and with the relationship between the practitioner and their helping spirits. Its teaching, genuine partnership, requires the surrender of independent control for the sake of collaborative grace. Manas, or human being, the mutual self, human consciousness, the fully realized human, interconnectedness, self-knowledge. Manas is the rune of the human being, specifically the human in relationship to other humans and to the divine. Its shape is two Wunjo runes facing each other, two joys meeting, suggesting that the fully realized human is understood in terms of reciprocal relationship rather than isolated individuality. Manaz is the rune of self-knowledge in the deepest sense, not narcissistic self-focus, but the ability to see oneself clearly, including one's shadow. It is also the rune of the community of human beings sharing a common dignity and a common fate. Its teaching, to know yourself truly, is to know your connection to all others. Rune magic casting, Bindrunes, and Galdr. The runes were not merely written, they were used. The Norse and Germanic peoples employed runes in 3 primary magical modes, as inscribed charms, as divinatory tools, and as vibrational invocations. Runic inscription. The most ancient use of runes was inscription, carving specific runes or runic combinations into wood, bone, metal, or stone to imbue an object with that rune's energy. Weapons were inscribed for victory, amulets for protection, memorial stones to honor the dead and bind their memory to the world of the living. The act of carving was understood as an act of will. The practitioner was not merely writing, but channeling the rune's power into physical matter through the focused combination of their intention and the rune's inherent force. Bindrunes. A bindrune is the deliberate overlapping or combining of 2 or more runic staves into a single composite symbol, creating a concentrated talisman that carries multiple runic energies in unified form. The creation of bindrunes requires an understanding of how specific runes interact, which combinations amplify and which conflict, and is considered one of the more advanced aspects of runic practice. The most famous historical bindrune is the Helm of Awe, a wheel of 8 Algues runes pointing outward from a center, used as a symbol of invincibility. Galdr, the sung rune. Galdr is the practice of chanting or singing the runes aloud. The sound of the rune's name, extended and projected with focused intention, was understood to activate and amplify the rune's power in the practitioner's body and energy field, and to direct that power outward toward its intended purpose. Galdr was practiced by both men and women. The figure of the Galdr woman appears repeatedly in the sagas as a practitioner of sung magical power. Runic divination. In contemporary practice, runic divination most commonly involves drawing runes from a bag and reading their messages for the situation at hand. The practitioner formulates a question, draws 1 or more runes with intention, and interprets the rune's meaning in the context of the question, including whether the rune is upright or reversed. Connection to haligricity. The runic system is one of the most complete examples in any tradition of what haligricity means by sacred symbol as living force. Each of the 24 runes is not a representation of a concept, but a concentration of a universal principle, a specific frequency of life force that can be engaged through inscription, visualization, chanting, and contemplation. The haligric use of intentional symbols, the wheel of the year as a living map of seasonal forces, and the understanding that spoken and written language carries creative power all resonate directly with the runic tradition. Galdr, the chanting of runes to activate their power, parallels the Yoruba understanding of Ash as the power of the spoken word to make what is said real. Norse cosmology, Yggdrasil and the 9 worlds. Norse cosmology is organized around Yggdrasil, the world tree, an immense ash that grows at the center of all existence and whose branches and roots connect all the 9 worlds. Yggdrasil is not merely a metaphor. In Norse understanding, it is the actual structural reality of the cosmos, a living being whose health is the health of all worlds. Yggdrasil, the world tree. Yggdrasil has 3 massive roots that extend to 3 cosmic wells. The first root reaches to Asgard and the Well of Urd, where the Norns, the weavers of fate, weave the destinies of gods and humans. The second root reaches to Jotunheim and Mimir's Well, the Well of Wisdom, where Odin sacrificed his eye for a drink of its waters. The third root reaches to Niflheim and Hergelmir, the roaring cauldron from which all rivers spring. Yggdrasil is inhabited by a diverse community of beings, the eagle who sees all, sitting at its crown, Ratatoskr the squirrel who runs up and down carrying insults between the eagle, and the serpent Nidhogg who gnaws at the roots, 4 stags who graze on its branches, and the serpents who perpetually attack the roots from below. The tree is constantly under threat and constantly renewed, tended by the Norns who water it daily from the sacred well, the 9 worlds, Asgard the realm of the Aesir gods, Odin, Thor, Frigg, Tyr, Balder, and the others. Located at the highest level of Yggdrasil and connected to Midgard by the Rainbow Bridge Bifrost, guarded by Heimdall. Midgard, the middle world, the realm of human beings, encircled by the great Midgard serpent Jormungandr, who bites its own tail in the outer ocean. Midgard was created from the body of the giant Ymir, slain by Odin and his brothers. Jotunheim, the realm of the Jotnar, not evil but primordial, representing the untamed forces of nature that predate and surround the ordered cosmos of the gods. The giants are Simultaneously, the gods' enemies, their in-laws, and their predecessors. Vanaheim, the realm of the Vanir, the other family of Norse gods, associated with fertility, magic, and the natural world. After a war between the Aesir and Vanir, a peace was made, and Ki Vanir came to live in Asgard. Alfheim, the realm of the light elves, luminous beings associated with creativity, light, and the natural world, given to Freyr as a gift at his birth. Svartalfheim, Nidavellir, the realm of the dwarves, master craftworkers who created the greatest treasures of the gods, Thor's hammer Mjolnir, Odin's spear Gungnir, Freya's necklace Brisingamen, Gleipnir. Niflheim, the primordial realm of ice, cold, and mist, one of the two cosmic forces whose interaction in the void of Ginnungagap created the first being, Ymir. Muspelheim, the primordial realm of fire, ruled by the fire giant Surtur, who will ultimately destroy the world at Ragnarok by sweeping fire across all the 9 worlds. Helheim, the realm of the dead, those who die of illness, old age, or circumstances other than glorious battle, ruled by Hel, a being who is half living and half dead. The Norse pantheon, Aesir and Vanir. The Norse divine world is inhabited by 2 families of gods, the Aesir and the Vanir, plus the giants, the elves, the dwarves, and numerous other beings. The Aesir and Vanir were once at war. Their peace brought the 2 families into alliance, and the combined pantheon of Norse mythology emerged from that synthesis. The Aesir tend toward governance, wisdom, and cosmic order, the Vanir toward fertility, magic, and the natural world. The Aesir. The Aesir are the primary family of Norse gods residing in Asgard. They include Odin, Thor, Frigg, Tyr, Balder, Heimdall, Loki, Idun, and Bragi. The Vanir. The Vanir are associated with fertility, abundance, magic, and the sea. The primary Vanir figures who join Asgard after the Aesir-Vanir War are Freyr, Freya, and Njord, Odin the Allfather, and the Seeker. Odin is the most complex figure in Norse mythology and one of the most complex divine figures in world religion. He is simultaneously the father of the gods and a relentless seeker who will sacrifice anything, including himself, to obtain greater knowledge and wisdom. Who Odin is. Odin is not the comfortable, all-powerful divine patriarch of many traditions. He is old, one-eyed, and frequently goes in disguise among humans as a wandering old man in a wide-brimmed hat and cloak. He is associated with war, but in the specific Norse understanding, war is a forge of excellence rather than as an end in itself. He selects the bravest of the slain for Valhalla not because he values death, but because he is assembling an army for Ragnarok, the final battle at the end of the world. Odin knows his own fate. He knows that at Ragnarok, the great wolf Fenrir will swallow him. He has seen this in his visions and has done nothing to prevent it, because Ragnarok is word and cannot be prevented. What Odin can do is prepare, gather wisdom, and ensure that the pattern of excellence that his cosmos has generated survives in some form past the end. The Norse cosmos is not eternal. It is magnificent precisely because it is finite. Odin sacrifices for wisdom. The great signature of Odin's character is his willingness to pay enormous personal cost for wisdom. He hangs on Yggdrasil for 9 nights to receive the runes. He sacrifices his eye to Mimir's well. He undergoes many deaths and resurrections in his constant wanderings. He drinks from the mead of poetry, obtained at great cost and shared generously with gods and humans alike. Odin is the patron of poets, skalds, runisters, warriors, wanderers, and all those who pay the personal price of genuine knowledge. Odin's ravens and wolves. Odin travels with 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, who fly across all the 9 worlds each day and return to Odin's shoulders to whisper what they have seen. He also keeps 2 wolves, Jerry and Freki, to whom he gives all the meat set before him. Odin himself sustains on wine alone. The ravens and wolves are not merely companions, but extensions of his own cognitive faculties. Thought and memory are what he sends into the world to gather knowledge. The wolves are his warrior nature given animal form. Thor, Freya, Loki, and the major deities. Fate, the Norns, and the web of Weird. The Norse understanding of fate is one of the most philosophically sophisticated in any tradition, and one of the most commonly misunderstood. Norse fate is not a predetermination that removes human agency. It is a web of woven consequences, the inevitable result of all causes that have gone before, within which new choices are always being made that will determine what comes after. The 3 Norns. At the base of Yggdrasil, beside the well of Urd, dwell the 3 Norns, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld. Together they weave the fate of gods and humans, carving their determinations into the wood of Yggdrasil and watering the tree daily from the sacred well. They are older than the gods themselves and answer to no authority above their own. Even Odin cannot override the Norns. Weird, the web of fate. Weird gives us the modern English word weird, which originally meant fate, destiny, what has happened. The Ward is the web of all actions and consequences, past and present, that determines the field of future possibilities. Every being has a wired, not a fixed script, but a pattern of tendencies and consequences that their past choices and their ancestors' choices have woven into their life's field. The skilled practitioner can read the wired, can perceive the pattern of what has been woven, and advise accordingly. The Norse warrior's response to fate. Knowing that fate cannot be avoided, the Norse response was not despair, but magnification. If the outcome is determined, then the quality with which you meet it is everything. The warrior who faces death bravely adds to the web's beauty, even as they are consumed by it. The recognition of fate in Norse tradition is not fatalism. It is the complete commitment to how you face what comes, since that is the dimension of experience that genuinely remains in your hands. Connection to heligricity. The Norse Norns and the web of word resonate directly with the heligric understanding of the law of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect, every effect has its cause, and the pattern of consequences from all previous choices structures the field of current possibilities. The heligric practitioner is not passive before fate. The tetralty is the tool of conscious choice within the field of wired, actively participating in weaving rather than merely being woven. The Norns are also a profound ancestor teaching. Erd is the ancestral inheritance, the choices of all who came before, that the current practitioner both receives and is responsible to. The ancestor altar honors Erd, the present practice engages Verdandi, the intention and the ritual direction shape Skuld, Norse afterlife Valhalla, hell, and the soul. The Norse afterlife is more complex and more democratic than its popular image suggests. Most people think of Valhalla, the golden hall of the chosen battle dead, but this is only one of several post-death destinations, and not available to the majority of the Norse population. Valhalla, the hall of the slain. Valhalla is Odin's great hall in Asgard, reserved for those who die in battle and are chosen by the Valkyries to join Odin's Einherjar, his army of the honored dead who train all day in glorious battle and feast on the boar Sarimnir and mead from the goat Heidrun. This is preparation the Einherjar will fight alongside the gods at Ragnarok. Folkvanger, Freya's field. Freya receives half of all who die in battle. By some accounts, she chooses first, before Odin gets his pick. Her realm, Folkvanger, with her hall Sessrumnir, is where these honored dead reside. This means that the heroic dead are divided between two divine patrons, which honors both the warrior nature and the magical loving nature of the Norse divine world. Helheim, the realm of the ordinary dead. The majority of the Norse dead, those who died of illness, age, or non-battle circumstances, went to Helheim, the realm ruled by Hel. Despite the name's resemblance to the Christian Hell, Helheim is not a place of punishment. Hell is simply the destination of the ordinary dead, a gray, quiet realm that is neither paradise nor torment, where the dead exist in a dimmer version of their living state. Hel herself, daughter of Loki and the giantess Angerboda, is depicted as half living and half dead, her face and body split between the color of a living person and the pallor of a corpse. The Norse soul, multiple components. Norse thought recognized multiple soul components, each with its own nature and post-death fate. The hugger is the active thinking mind. The fylgja is a personal guardian spirit, often appearing as an animal, that accompanies a person through life and whose condition reflects their spiritual state. The hamingja is personal luck or spiritual power, a force that can be passed from the dying to the living and that accumulates or depletes based on the quality of one's life. The lich is the physical body. Understanding these components explains why the Norse treated their dead with such care. Each component had specific needs and specific relationships to the surviving community. What is paganism? The umbrella and its many traditions. The word pagan was used by early Christians as a term for those who continued to practice the old pre-Christian religions of Europe, particularly the country people whose ancient practices were slower to be displaced than those of urban populations. Today, paganism serves as a broad umbrella term for a diverse collection of nature-based, polytheistic, and pre-Christian or post-Christian spiritual traditions. What unites modern paganism? Despite the enormous diversity under the pagan umbrella, several orientations unite most pagan traditions. The recognition of nature as sacred, a polytheistic or at least pantheistic understanding of the divine, the honoring of seasonal cycles, ancestor veneration, and the understanding of an ongoing relationship between the living and the dead, and an emphasis on direct experience of the sacred rather than on revealed scripture and institutional mediation. Major pagan traditions. Asatru and heathenry are the Reconstructionist Norse Germanic traditions, attempting to practice authentic Norse paganism based on scholarship of the historical evidence. Druidry is the Celtic nature spirituality tradition. Hellenism practices the ancient Greek religion. Kemetism practices ancient Egyptian religion. Slavic paganism reconstructs the pre-Christian religious traditions of Eastern Europe. Wicca is the most widespread modern pagan tradition. Wicca history, theology, and practice. Wicca is the most widely practiced modern pagan religion, and one of the fastest growing spiritual movements in the world. It is also one of the most misrepresented popular culture, has alternately demonized it as Satanism, and trivialized it as a New Age hobby. Neither is accurate. Wicca is a genuine religion with a serious theology, a coherent ethical framework, a rich ritual practice, and a community of practitioners whose spiritual experiences deserve respect. Origins, Gerald Gardner, and the birth of modern Wicca. Modern Wicca was publicly inaugurated by Gerald Gardner, a British civil servant, anthropologist, and occultist who, following the repeal of Britain's Witchcraft Act in 1951, began publishing books about a witch religion he claimed to have encountered in the New Forest area of England in the late 1930s. Gardner's Witchcraft Today and the Meaning of Witchcraft introduced the public to what he called the craft, a nature religion combining elements of ceremonial magic, folk magic traditions, nudist philosophy, and pre-Christian spiritual sensibility. The historical question of whether Gardner discovered a genuinely surviving traditional witchcraft practice or substantially invented Wicca himself is still debated. Most contemporary Wiccan scholars, including many practitioners, acknowledge that Wicca as a formalized religion is substantially a 20th century creation, even if it draws on ancient materials. This does not invalidate its spiritual reality. The insights and practices it contains are genuine regardless of their precise historical lineage. Doreen Valiente and the heart of Wicca. If Gardner founded Wicca, Doreen Valiente gave it its soul. Valiente was Gardner's high priestess and the most gifted liturgical writer in the tradition's history. She identified the ceremonial magic elements Gardner had incorporated from Crowley, rewrote them, and replaced them with poetry of genuine beauty and spiritual depth. The Charge of the Goddess, the central devotional text of Wicca, delivered by the high priestess in the voice of the goddess, is primarily her composition. Her Witchcraft for Tomorrow and other works established Wicca as a serious, thoughtful, feminine-honoring spiritual path. Wiccan ethics, the Rede and the Threefold Law. Wicca's primary ethical statement is the Wiccan Rede, and it harm none, do what you will. This is not a permission slip for unlimited self-indulgence. Harm none is an extremely demanding standard that requires considering the consequences of one's actions for all beings affected. The Rede is a call to the exercise of genuine ethical discernment rather than the following of a fixed list of rules. The Threefold Law holds that whatever magical or intentional energy a practitioner sends into the world returns to them 3 times over, making harm-causing magic not merely ethically wrong but practically self-defeating. The Threefold Law is not universally accepted among Wiccans, but remains the most widely cited ethical principle in the tradition. Connection to haligicity, Wicca's central ethical principle, and it harm none, do what ye will, resonates directly with the haligric understanding that the tetralty is not a tool for imposing one's will on others, but for creating conditions in which one's genuine, highest self can be fully expressed. The harm none standard, taken seriously, requires the kind of sustained self-awareness and consideration of consequences that the haligric practice of thinking cultivates. The Threefold Law parallels the law of cause and effect in the 7 Hermetic principles. What you send returns to you, shaped and amplified by the quality of your intention. Wicca also confirms the haligric recognition that spiritual authority is not conferred by institutional hierarchy, but by the quality of one's practice, knowledge, and service to the community. Part 12. The Wiccan Wheel of the Year and the Sabbats. The Wiccan sacred calendar follows the same 8-spoked wheel of the year that Haligricity's Haligric Book of Rituals uses. The 4 solar festivals and 4 fire festivals inherited from Celtic and Germanic paganism. In Wicca, these 8 celebrations are called Sabbats and are understood as the annual cycle of the sacred relationship between the god and the goddess. The 8 Wiccan Sabbats, Samhain, Yule, Imbolc, Ostara, Beltane, Litha, Lugnasad, and Mabon, are the same 8 gates of the Druidic tradition, celebrated by Wicca with its own ritual forms, symbolism, and theological interpretation. In addition to the Sabbats, Wicca observes the Esbats, ritual gatherings held at the full moon that focus on magical working and the direct honoring of the goddess and her lunar aspect. Wiccan deities, the god and the goddess. The theological heart of Wicca is the divine couple, the god and the goddess, who together constitute the complete divine reality. This is not the monotheism of a single supreme being who happens to have a masculine consort, nor is it a simple dualism of equal opposites. It is the recognition that the divine, in its complete expression, encompasses both the feminine creative principle and the masculine regenerative principle in a dynamic sacred partnership. The goddess. The goddess is a primary theological reality in most forms of Wicca. She is the great mother, the fertile earth, the dark ocean, the moon's changing phases, the womb that births all things, and the tomb that receives them when they die. She is typically understood as triple, maiden, mother, and crone, corresponding to the three phases of the moon and the three phases of a woman's biological life. The triple goddess is one of the most powerful and complete divine feminine archetypes in Western spirituality. She has many names across different Wiccan traditions: Aradia, Diana, Hecate, Isis, Brigid, Ceridwen, the Lady. She encompasses all goddesses while being identified with none of them exclusively. Doreen Valiente's charge of the goddess expresses her nature. She is the beauty of the green earth, the white moon among the stars, the mystery of the waters, and the desire of the heart of all human beings. The god. The god in Wicca is the solar agricultural deity, born at Yule from the goddess, growing in strength through spring, reaching his peak at Litha, beginning his decline through the harvest, and dying at Samhain to be reborn again at Yule. He is the green man, the horned god, and the lord of the wild hunt. His death and rebirth encode the agricultural cycle. The grain that is planted grows, is harvested, and its seed replanted. He gives himself to the harvest so that his people may live. A solar divinity who is sacrificed for abundance. Wiccan ritual casting the circle and the elements. Wiccan ritual has a specific structured form that creates a sacred container for magical and devotional work. While the details vary significantly across different traditions and solitary practitioners, the core elements are consistent: the casting of the circle, the calling of the quarters, the invocation of the divine, the working, the cakes and ale, and the closing of the circle. Casting the circle. The ritual circle is the fundamental sacred space of Wiccan practice. It is cast by the high priestess or priest walking the circle's perimeter deosol, typically with an athame or wand, while visualizing a sphere of white or blue light expanding from the center to encompass the working space. The circle is understood as existing simultaneously in the physical world and the astral spiritual world, between the worlds, a temporary sacred space that concentrates magical energy and protects those within. The four quarters and elements. The four cardinal directions are called in sequence, each associated with a specific element, quality, and type of being. East is air, intellect, communication, breath, new beginnings. The beings of the east are sylphs or winds. South is fire, will, transformation, passion, courage. The beings of the south are salamanders or fire elementals. West is water. Emotion, intuition, the unconscious, healing. The beings of the west are undines or water spirits. North is earth, physical manifestation, stability, abundance. The body, the beings of the north are gnomes or earth spirits. Together, the four elements constitute the complete material reality in which magical work takes place. The charge of the goddess and drawing down the moon. Drawing down the moon is one of the most distinctive and powerful Wiccan ritual practices. The high priest invokes the goddess into the body and consciousness of the high priestess, who then speaks the charge of the goddess, the central devotional text of Wicca, in the first person as the goddess speaking directly to her people. This is not merely theatrical, it is a genuine invocatory practice in which the practitioner serves as a vessel for the divine presence to speak through. The charge of the goddess, as written by Doreen Valiente, includes the line, "If that which thou seekest thou findest not within thee, thou wilt never find it without thee." Magic is directed natural energy. Wiccan magic is understood as the practice of directing natural energy through intention, will, emotion, and symbolic action toward a specific outcome. Aleister Crowley's definition of magic, the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will, influenced Wicca significantly, though most Wiccans add the ethical qualification of the reed. Spellworking in Wicca uses candles, herbs, crystals, written intentions, visualization, chanting, and movement to concentrate and direct energy. The practitioner is not beseeching an external power to act. They are working with the energy that flows through them and through the natural world to catalyze change. Connection to halagricity. Wiccan rituals casting of the circle, the deliberate creation of a sacred container between the worlds in which concentrated magical work can occur, is the same principle as the hologric opening of sacred space in the Book of Rituals. Both understand that ceremony requires a defined, protected, and energetically prepared container. The four quarters and elements in Wicca parallel the four dimensions of the tetralty air, fire, water, earth. The Wiccan drawing down the moon, the practitioner as vessel for the divine to speak through, is the same principle as the Awen in the Druidic tradition, the Haligric understanding that genuine wisdom arrives through us rather than from us, and the Rastafari teaching of I and I as the divine speaking through the human vessel. Norse, pagan Wicca, and haligricity where the paths cross. The Norse runic Wiccan complex of traditions touches haligricity at multiple significant points, not as peripheral influences but as deep structural resonances. The runes and the living symbol. The runic system's understanding of each letter as a living force, not a representation of an idea, but an actual concentration of a cosmic principle that can be engaged through inscription, chanting, and contemplation, is one of the world's most complete examples of the Haligric understanding of sacred symbol as genuine creative force. The Haligric tetralty symbol operates on the same principle. It is not decoration, but a living pattern that carries specific energetic meaning and can be used as a focal point for conscious engagement with what it represents. Odin and the cost of wisdom. Odin's willingness to pay enormous personal cost for wisdom, the eye, the hanging, the perpetual seeking, is one of the most honest ancient depictions of what genuine spiritual development actually costs. The Haligric understanding that real magic requires genuine engagement, genuine feeling, genuine risk, and genuine transformation, not merely the acquisition of techniques or information, resonates with the Odinic path. The seeker who approaches Haligricity, wanting a comfortable system of spiritual affirmations, has not yet met Odin. The Wheel of the Year, the Wiccan Norse Celtic Wheel of the Year, the 8-gate sacred calendar, is structurally identical to the Haligric ritual calendar in the Book of Rituals. The words of ignition for each gate are the Haligric expression of the same seasonal energetic reality that the pagan traditions mapped and honored. Haligricity does not borrow the wheel. It recognizes the wheel as the actual pattern of living time that all traditions have independently perceived. The triple goddess and the divine feminine. Wicca's triple goddess, maiden, mother, crone, is one of the most complete articulations of the divine feminine as encompassing the full spectrum of feminine power rather than limiting it to any single expression. Haligricity honors the divine feminine as equally fundamental to the divine masculine, and the triple goddess framework gives language to the full range, the freshness and courage of the maiden, the creative fullness of the mother, and the deep wisdom of the crone. All three are honored in the Haligric understanding of feminine sacred power. Magic as conscious direction of natural energy, the Wiccan understanding of magic as the deliberate direction of natural energy through intention, will, emotion, and symbolic action, is the most direct practical articulation of what real magic, an introduction by Hallie Sarah Parsons, introduces as its central subject. Magic is not supernatural. It is the natural operation of consciousness engaging with the living energy field that permeates all existence. Wicca has developed this understanding into a sophisticated practical system that fully confirms and complements the Haligric approach. Word, fate, and the law of cause and effect. The Norse web of Ward. The understanding that the present field of possibilities is determined by all causes that have gone before, and that present choices are weaving the pattern of future consequences, is one of the most philosophically precise ancient expressions of the law of cause and effect. The Haligric practitioner who understands word understands why working with the feeling, thinking, speaking, and doing dimensions of experience matters. Every movement in any of these four dimensions is a thread being woven into the web that determines what comes next. I know that I hung on the windswept tree for 9 full nights, wounded with a spear, and given to Odin, myself to myself, on that tree of which no man knows from what roots it rises. Havamal, the sayings of the High One. The Norse tradition asks the hardest question of any spiritual path. What are you willing to give up for wisdom? Not what affirmations are you willing to repeat? Not what techniques are you willing to apply? But what are you willing to surrender, genuinely, permanently, at real cost, in order to know what must be known? Odin hung 9 nights on the tree, not because he had to, but because he chose to. The runes screamed when he took them. Real knowledge is received that way. The Wiccan charge of the goddess whispers the same truth in softer tones. If you seek what you cannot find within yourself, you will never find it without. It is already here. It has always been here. The question is only what you are willing to sacrifice to stop looking elsewhere. Grand Rising, Personal Reading Series, Haligricity, or IQ Productions, or May 2026.